Hey guys, it's your favorite sisters with the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver podcast. On the show, you'll hear caregivers confessing the good, the bad, and the completely unexpected. You're guaranteed to relate, be inspired, leave with helpful tips and resources, and of course, laugh. Now, let's jump right in to today's guest confession. Hey, Jay.
Natalie, how are you today?
I am swimming right along. It is a beautiful Thursday.
It is in Bristol, Virginia.
Yes, and you know what? We're coming today from the amazing PBS studio in the Hard Rock, Bristol.
That is right.
And it is PBS Appalachia.
I'm glad you've been practicing.
I've been practicing to make sure, because even though I'm from Tennessee, sometimes I say Appalachia, but people are going to get real sideways real fast if we don't do
That's right.
Appalachia.
I got to keep you in line.
So, I think today is a perfect day, along with always looking in. I get to see you, but actually I get to see Cookie Monster, who's off camera.
Yeah.
And so he's always with me as my emotional support monster. But we should do a podcast.
Let's do it. And you know what? There is no better guest. I mean, there's many guests, but this guest is an experienced guest.
Oh, I'm telling you right now, she is like a powerhouse. And we have been playing a little bit because we had to reschedule. Remember that one time when you got pink eye?
Yeah. Okay. But you know what her experience is? Not only is she a caregiver, she is a podcaster as well. And it's so much fun to interview a podcaster.
I love it when there's another podcaster, because then we're like, ooh, I hope we're as good as she is.
So let me tell you about her. So today, guys, we have Jess Ronnie with us. She, like I said, we got another guest. Well, we got a cool podcaster. She's also, of course, a caregiver advocate.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you a little bit about her background, though. So Jess Ronnie is host of the podcast Coffee with Caregivers, because we need a lot of coffee around here.
A lot of coffee.
She is an author. She is a speaker. She is the Lucas Project founder. She also has a little time, to do some documentaries. And she is a caregiver. We'll give you a little background on her story. Most of it started, I'll say, she's going to tell you a lot more than that. It started in 2004 when her second child, Lucas, it was before he was born, really, Nat. And then with Lucas's father. And today, we're going to talk about, I love this, some of her tagline is Jess and the Mess. I think that's how it goes.
I love that.
She is, she's in Michigan, and she's got a husband. She's got 8 others. Kids. I just love it, Jess. So she's
almost got a baseball team. She's one short of a full baseball team.
Exactly. She's talking about the mess, and Natalie and I are all over it, Jess.
They're all about some mess, Jess.
Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My pleasure.
Oh, we're excited to chat with you and hear more about your story, and definitely we'll get to the Lucas Project, because this is such amazing work that you guys are doing. And so, but let's start from the beginning. It's always my favorite thing is I want to start from the beginning, which typically is you were born, and then we can skip past like the first 5 years, the formative years. But tell us about kind of growing up and get us and kind of bring us up, like kind of walk us along, give us about your background. Because I'm going to tell you, we're going to want to know what birth order you're in. That's going to be super important. Clearly, JJ is the oldest by age. You can see it. So.
Yes. Well, going back to the very beginning, I was born in 1977.
Oh, she gave it all.
Yes. I will be turning 48 here in a couple of weeks. And my formative years were actually pretty important, because I was born and then 11 other siblings came along. So I am the firstborn.
Oldest.
And
thank you.
It was me at 2 years old, and then twin brothers, and then another child like every 2 years. So I've kind of been in this caregiving role my whole life. It's what I've recently come to discover.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just always been helping and caring and doing and accomplishing. And that just kind of continued into teenage years with all the siblings and helping to raise them. And I was homeschooled, so there was like another added layer to that, and, helping the younger siblings. And then I left home at 18 and headed off to college.
I love that. I love that. Like your parents were like, we're going to just go ahead and have about a dozen kids. But the reality is, though, I mean, you're originally from Michigan still, correct?
I am.
And so are you from a rural area, urban area?
Pretty much urban, like 20 minutes outside of Grand Rapids.
Okay.
But I was raised on a farm. We had sheep. It's funny, my dad was an attorney and my mom had this great idea to buy this farm, and nobody had any idea like what we were doing with this farm and all these sheep and these dogs and these cats. And so my dad, would go to work and he'd come home and shear sheep. It was like,
wow, I love that.
This must be caregiver common, because our last guest, she actually sheared sheep as well. This is the first 2 times we've discussed.
We've never talked sheep in the
shearing.
podcast, and I really like that.
Yeah, this is interesting.
She also knew how to operate a manure spreader, which was really unsure. We did not expect to talk about a manure spreader either. But this is about you.
Yeah.
So you grew up. I love that you helped raise, because I'm going to tell you this. That's why I was asking about rural kind of versus urban. A lot of times, and think about culturally at that time, siblings helped raise siblings too, not just parents. And so with a dozen kids, and I definitely could see how you'd be helping with doing, I'm assuming like bathing, making sure everybody's getting dressed, everybody's getting on, making sure that everybody's life's right. I'm assuming you were also probably a little bit of a teacher, helping with schoolwork, and because you guys were homeschooled. But as you're getting smarter, there's got to be smaller kids that you're probably helping your mom out with and saying, hey, this is, helping them right along.
yeah, for sure. And I was born and then I had 3 brothers. And then my sister finally came along as child number 5. So I was ecstatic to have a sister. And then there were 4 sisters right in a row. So I was like, mini mom.
I love that.
Braiding their hair and helping them get dressed. And, they were just my real life baby dolls.
Oh, they're like Barbies of your own. That is fantastic.
Baby dolls.
I love it.
Well, and I know that you're a blended family with 8 children, and 8 probably doesn't even feel like anything to you. You're like, this is only 8 people. I'm like, I had 11.
Well, that's the funny thing. Yeah, it wasn't that shocking to my system. Now my husband was like, oh my word, this is a lot of kids. And I was like, it's not really. It's not that bad.
Oh my God. I love that. So you helped, you got through childhood, and it sounds pretty diverse being on a farm, but also your dad was an attorney. You're close to the city. So it wasn't very isolating like rural areas like most people are like, oh, I lived in a rural area my whole life and go into the big city kind of thing. But you go to college, and it probably was the first time you were on your own. And so then what happens?
I met my husband, Jason, and we were married in 2000. I graduated with a degree in education, English as my major, because I wanted to be a writer, but everybody was like, but what are you going to do to like make money? And so went ahead and got a degree in education. And then we ended up getting married. We had our first child in 2002, Caleb. And then we were really excited to add to our family and found out we were pregnant again about 14 months after having Caleb. And that's where my life took a drastic turn, and really when I became a forever parent caregiver.
Wow. And I like the way that you described that, a forever parent caregiver, because there's so many parents, Jess, who have children that may, whether it's a differing ability, a chronic illness, complex illness, whatnot, they always see themselves as a parent and don't tag on that component for caregiving, because, and I think that's why the definition, when people say, hey, caregivers lean into this, it's because you have so many more duties and responsibilities when you're caring for somebody that has an intellectual disability, or that has an illness that really requires a lot more than your traditional child rearing.
So tell us about Lucas.
Yeah.
Tell us about that pregnancy.
Yeah. Well, when I went to that ultrasound, like you had stated earlier, we were told that he had suffered from a stroke in utero and there was very little hope. We decided not to terminate the pregnancy and proceed. And he was born 4 months later. They literally had to cut me open from one side of my belly to the other to accommodate his 2-year-old size head at birth, which was full of cerebral spinal fluid.
Wow.
He had brain surgery at 1 day old and spent 2 weeks in the NICU. And then we were sent home with our miracle baby with sort of this umbrella tag of special needs. And it was like, it could go anyway. He could, end up being typical and catch up with his peers. He could be profoundly disabled. Like there was really no like static diagnosis of what he had. And so we just went home, And it was extremely difficult. He was delayed in everything. He never slept. He had level 3 autism, but we wouldn't know that for years, until years later.
Yeah.
And I hardly ever slept because I was terrified. If he were to roll over in the middle of the night, he would have suffocated himself. He couldn't have lifted his head back up.
How old were you at that time? I'm just curious. You're young.
How old was I?
You're still in your 20s. I say you're young. We're young. You're like
27, I believe.
Yeah, you were still a puppy.
Yeah. So,
yeah. It was just very, very challenging those first couple of years.
Yeah.
So that sounds very stressful, especially. And so, because I think you have him, and is there a point where you and your husband, like, because at this point you're thrown back into caregiving in a massively different way than just traditionally helping some basic things. I'm assuming you all have to get up to speed like super fast about how am I going to support him to make sure that he's cared for. I can only imagine how stressful that could be on your marriage. And then you also have a toddler? You have a 2-year-old or so. And so how does these first formative years, what does that look like for you and your husband?
Yeah, massively stressful. I quit my job, and it was basically me taking care of the 2 kids and Jason, who had started a fitness club, working on launching his fitness club. And it was just kind of understood, I'm not working, so I will be the one primarily taking the night shifts. I mean, Jason would help to the best of his ability, but I was also pumping. And at this stage too, we are just absolutely intent on doing whatever we need to do to get Lucas like normal. Like, I was in complete denial that he even had special needs. We were just believing that eventually he would be like a typical child and we could just sort of get on with our life. But in the meantime, we were willing to sacrifice to like get him to that point.
Wow.
And I didn't even really come to grips with the fact that Lucas was profoundly disabled until he started to go through puberty. And then he became aggressive, very behaviorally challenged, nonverbal, incontinent. And that's when it really began to dawn on me, and really when I began to grieve, like, this is a lifelong thing. Right. He is not going to grow out of this. And what does that mean for not only his future, but our future as a family?
Yeah. No kidding. It's interesting that you didn't really, I think it comes to it as an acceptance as puberty. That's what, 12 years old? 12, 13 years 13. Old. Yeah. And so, because God help us, children hit puberty a lot younger than I think we used to. But at the same time, though, you all didn't stop with Lucas having children, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So,
like you all, I think we're going to take a break. We're going to have some more kids. Yeah. And so tell me a little bit about those years, because we'll get to that puberty stage with Lucas. But you have a child who has a lot of needs. You have your older son, and you're trying to navigate that. You're stay-at-home mom, and then you have a couple more kids.
Mm-hmm. My plan was always to have 3 boys and a girl, and I'm not governed by fear. That's Absolutely. Just a strength I have. And so we were not going to stop just because, we had a child with disabilities. Right. And we did find out we were pregnant again, had our daughter Mabel in 2007. Yeah. And that's when Jason started having a lot of unexplained health problems, losing weight rapidly. He was disoriented all the time, vision loss, and we were back to specialist after specialist, just trying to determine what was wrong with my husband at this point.
Yeah. Right. So so you're caring for a lot of people, which I don't think, would you say that felt abnormal to you?
I guess as I've been able to process this past year in particular, I think I've sort of lived my whole life almost in survival mode, just always moving and going. And I mean, from 2 years old, my arms were wrapped around my twin brothers helping out. So I'm finally learning a little bit what to rest and exhale looks like, but it's been a long process. So I think I just kept going. I was really intentional about taking care of myself, working out. My husband wasn't, he was a tennis professional. He owned a fitness club. He was a personal trainer. We ate well. We napped when we needed to. We tag teamed a lot. We just did the best we could during those years.
Yeah. So I want to talk about, and I know I'm absolutely going to get to Lucas, but and this is your first husband, Jason. My husband's name is Jason too. I'm like, oh, your husband's name is Jason. What was that like? Because you said that it was 3 years later that he was diagnosed with cancer. And can you walk us through that? Because that's what I mean by like you're caring for your spouse, your children, and your child that has different special needs, and really some special needs. And you also had Mabel in 2007. And so what is that like as you guys are going through the doctor's appointments and all that stuff? Because ultimately, because I don't recall Jason's, what type of cancer that he had.
Well, it was a brain tumor. And he actually passed out at home a couple of months after Mabel was born and was rushed to the local ER where they discovered that he had a baseball-sized brain tumor. They operated and it was not malignant at the time. It was just benign. So we were given the option to just watch and wait. And we were told often these tumors don't come back for 20 years. So they said, go home, live your life. You know, you shouldn't have to deal with this anymore. And we were like, okay, we've had brain surgery with Lucas, brain surgery with Jason. I think we're probably good for a while.
Yeah.
And in that good period of about 1.5 years, we discovered we were pregnant again. And after I was about 4 or 5 months along, the cancer returned. And this time it was a glioblastoma. And Jason went on to fight for exactly 14 months. And he passed away August 24, 2010, 1 month before his infant son turned 1 year old.
Wow.
We're going to take a break because we're going to take a break. And
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
All right, everybody. We are here with Jess Ronnie, and in this amazing, what I think is a short amount of time, you have gone through all of these things, 4 children, a child with special needs, and there's this amazing strength in you. You're like, no, they've sent us home with Lucas, and he's going to be fine. I'm amazed they just sent him home after a very short amount of time.
They're like, oh, okay, well,
they've
he had
told
brain
you,
surgery at 1 day old.
Yeah.
We'll just send him on home 2 weeks later. No worries.
They've told you that your husband, after this tumor, go home, you're going to live your life. Basically, it's going to be fine. 20 years, it'll come back. My curiosity is, when they've done all these things, have you had a sense of relief with that positive response? So you're just like, good to go. Let's just move on. Obviously, you had that 4th child, but are you feeling that lightheartedness before Jason passes? Everything's going to be good. Is that your attitude, Jess?
Yeah, we were. Like, he felt great. Like, he had a new lease on life, which I hadn't seen in a long time because of all of the health problems he had been having. And we were just really like solidified in, okay, we've got this. And he's a fighter. I'm a fighter. He's also a firstborn. We both see the world like very black and white. We both attack problems as they come. And he was the perfect spouse really to have during this entire marriage where we basically lived in survival mode. We just tackled each thing as it came, and we had faith that God would see us through and he would get us to the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you this. So at any point during this time, because there's so much going on, I wonder about, did you ever have moments where you're like, God, do you really think that we really need this right now? We've had a lot going on. Because I've had conversations with God, to be honest with you, about like, especially when, my Jason has neck and back issues. And so that really impacted him significantly in his ability to work. And then his insult to injury was when he got head and neck cancer. And it was like, he was so upset, like, haven't I suffered enough? Haven't I given enough? It almost feels like, I can't remember who it was in the Bible who really suffered the whole time. And I'm like,
Job.
Thank you. The patience of Job, honestly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Do you ever have those conversations with God when you're laying in bed at night? Like, can we talk about this for a sec?
I don't think it was necessarily a conversation like that. That final year of Jason's life, I was extremely angry and I operated out of anger. That was kind of the fuel that kept me going.
Yeah.
And it is, I mean, anger is an adrenaline source, and it will get your butt out of bed in the morning and keep you taking care of kids. And I had 3 in diapers and a husband in hospice. And I leaned very heavily on my firstborn, Caleb, who was 6 years old at the time. His father would fall out of bed because he would become disoriented, and Caleb and I would lift his dad back into bed, and Caleb would feed his dad while I was nursing the baby or changing Mabel or changing Luke, or I just relied on him very, very heavily during those days and just would wail out to the Lord, honestly, like, I don't understand why you would make me walk such a challenging path. It doesn't seem fair. And ultimately I came to this point of surrender about 2 weeks before Jason died, where I just dropped to my knees and I said, I don't understand it, but your will be done. I will be obedient to what you call of me this side of eternity. I don't get it, but I will trust you.
Yeah. That gives me cold chills.
Yeah. I really I appreciate you sharing that, Jess, because I know what our faith is. And that idea of surrender is so hard and I think also it's okay, because I talk to God sometimes. I'm like, Lord, you are really testing me with Mom, and I don't understand why you took Dad. That's a fight we have as well. Like, Lord, I still need him. And but just to be able to have that honest conversation with God and to be angry, but also for caregivers to hear it's okay to be angry, but you have to find that way you've got to find a way to find peace with it, I think is kind of a really key thing. Tell me, you've got all these people that you're caring for. I want to talk a little bit about differences that you saw, how you were caring for Lucas, but also how you're caring for Jason. When you talk to caregivers now, what are you seeing, like the differences that it took for you caring for 2 different relationships in your life?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. Nobody's ever asked me that before. I think when it's your child, there is a more of an element of patience, maybe. Because with your spouse, sometimes it's hard to see past the fact that they are struggling. Especially my spouse was a personal trainer, a gym owner, like he had strength and he really did the best he could. But I often felt resentful too, because I'm caring for 4 young children and a husband. And so he really would try to do everything to the best of his ability, which led to those times when he would fall out of bed because he didn't want to burden me. So he would try to make it to the bathroom unassisted, or he would try to make it to the kitchen to make himself like a grilled cheese sandwich. Once at 2 a.m, he thought morning had come and he didn't want to bother me. He was hungry. So he wandered to the kitchen, tried to make a grilled cheese sandwich, and almost burned the house down. So like moments of annoyance, but then having that conversation, that internal dialogue with yourself, like he has terminal cancer. It was just hard to extend that grace and that patience a lot of the time because of how chaotic and overwhelmed I was with the 4 kids, on top of that. But yeah, when it's your child and it's a newborn or they're a baby or a toddler, I think there is it's a lot easier to extend that grace and that patience.
Did you, because of that diagnosis, at the same time, you're caring for all these people, did you ever have time to say, my spouse is going to die, address that, and also have to deal with a grief process when you're doing all this other stuff? Or did you just say, I don't have time for that?
I did up until about that 2-week marker. And that's when I had a conversation with a friend who had lost her husband to a brain tumor as well a year prior. And she said to me, Jess, when it comes to the end, you drop everything. You drop your kids, you drop any agenda you have, and you crawl into bed with Jason and you stay beside him and you stay present and you tell him everything that you wanted to tell him for the final weeks of his life or days of his life. And that's what I did. Those final 2 weeks, I dropped everything. I allowed other people to take care of my kids, and I crawled into bed with him, and he hung on way longer than anybody thought. At that point, they thought like at tops a week, and he lasted 2 weeks. But I had praise and worship music going. We prayed together. We talked together. We talked about memories of our life. And by the time he passed away, I'd really reached a point of acceptance. And I was ready to see him enter heaven and to escape the pain that he was in.
Oh, that just hurts even my little M&M heart.
Yeah.
And it goes back to, like, we always talk about Heather Zocali about, like, she has this phrase that she talks about things being brutally beautiful. That is brutally beautiful. The time that you spent, because I think that, I don't know if you ever felt this way, but in the midst of caring for Jason, for me, I lost the sense of our relationship as husband and wife. It was really a caregiver standpoint. And it sounds like those 2 weeks gave you the opportunity to reconnect your relationship in a different way, not that of a caregiver and a person being cared for, but kind of reconnecting as, you're my lobster, you're my person, and being able to remind yourself, because it's so easy, and I think this is so important for everybody who's caregivers, it's so easy to get wrapped up in the care that you forget the original relationship of how it started. And whether it's a spouse, it's a parent, it's a child, it's like you can't task so much and forget and overtask and forget the relationship. So that hurts my heart. So I want to kind of move a little bit further. And so Jason has passed, and you are now a mother with 4 children. And I don't know if you're sitting around just kind of looking around and being like, well, now what happens? Because really, I would look, there's this crescendo. And I would think that you're like, okay, I hate to say, what you know he's going to pass, you're waiting to die, but then what happens? What are you thinking at that point?
Yeah, when he died and after the busyness of the funeral and all the preparations and everything, there was sort of this stillness and this space and this quiet, because I wasn't caring for somebody with terminal cancer anymore. And in that stillness, I really leaned into my kids. I felt like I'd missed them so much just in caring for their father over the past month or two. And I would hand them off to be cared for by other people. Yeah. And I was just really committed to continuing to live for them. And in fact, when I buried Jason, I buried a letter with him that promised him that the kids wouldn't lose 2 parents, one to death and one to depressive grief. And I committed to getting up out of bed every day, getting them off to school, caring for them. When they napped, I napped every single day. I was exhausted after those months of caring for Jason, but I enrolled in a master's class a week after he died as like a tangible step of continuing to move forward in my life, because I knew it would be really easy to get stagnant and stuck. Yeah. Like I had to continue to put one foot in front of the other and live somehow for my kids.
That, I think you had to continue living. Yeah. That is the message. And that doesn't mean that you can't still experience grief. It doesn't mean that you don't honor his memory, but you are allowed to continue. And I think we know, because you're out there so much, and you probably heard many, many stories of people feel like, I can't move on. I can't live without you. And the reality is that your person that you're caring for would want you to go ahead and move on. And so I love that you're like, I'm going to be fearless, but it is your personality. It is like, you're very, very clear about how your personality is, and you're still the mom to 4 children, and Lucas, because Lucas still has a ton of needs. And so, I'm trying to do the timeline on the age-wise of the children. You said that Lucas started having some pretty significant issues behaviorally when he hit puberty. Was this after Jason passed?
Yes. So my kids, when Jason passed, were 7, 5, 3, and 1.
They're little.
They were very little.
So
oh my Lord.
Luke and his puberty struggles happened like in my next lifetime.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so go ahead, Jess.
So, and I'm going to talk about we're like next life. So I'm going to talk about those. We got intermediate years, and then we've got a next lifetime, because you've got so tell me.
Oh, wait, before you ask that question, let's take our break.
Okay.
We'll do an early break, and then we'll be right back, and then we can go into the next chapter. All right.
Okay, everybody, we are back with Jess Ronnie. Okay, we're going to chapter 2. I feel like she's got a long book, and she's got books. But this is her book. So we got an intermediate period here. You're on your own. I say on your own. You're like, tell me about those years, and because you are a mama of all these kids, but you're also managing Lucas. I want to see about how if you felt like that ever impacted your relationship with the other kids. Did that take time away from them? If they ever if they've ever given you that feedback of, Mom, you spend all your time with Lucas, and what your feelings were during that period of caring for him. And you're on your own, or do you get help? How does
you
that
get
work?
like 30 questions.
I know,
Jess is like, I'm going to have to write them down.
Let's have it.
This is what she does, Jess. Just go ahead and just start talking.
Spill it.
Well, I wasn't on my own for very long. I was married within a year.
No kidding.
So,
That's the intermediate. Yeah.
Okay, so go in that part.
Okay. So, Jason passed away in August, and his mom actually pulled me aside at the funeral and said, Jess, I just want you to know I'm praying for your next husband. And I was like, Mom, I am not there. We just buried your son. We just buried my husband. And she's like, no, you can't do this life with these 4 kids on your own. And I know God has a plan, and he has a new dad picked out for them. And I just went home and didn't think much about it. And October 31st, I took the kids out trick-or-treating, took all the pictures. I showed everybody in the world, I was moving and functioning. And I came home and checked my blog, which I had kept updated for the masses during Jason's 3-year cancer battle. And a stranger from Pennsylvania left a comment on my blog, and she said, Jess, I don't know why I'm doing this, but there's a young widower in Oklahoma. His name is Ryan. He has 3 kids. His wife passed away from brain cancer 4 days after Jason died, and he's not doing very well. I just think you could be a source of encouragement to him. So I found his blog, left a comment, and woke up the next day to an email from this man. And we were engaged 4 months later and married in 2011. He moved to Michigan with his 3 kids. We adopted each other's kids and eventually had the baby together, who is now 9 years old.
Holy, you talk about.
There's no phase 2. I mean, there's a small, wow, that's gonna be it is.
That is divine intervention. And when, and I go back, it makes me super tearful now. Because I go back to thinking about when you got on your knees 2 weeks before and surrendered and said, I'm going to follow you and I'm going to trust the path that you have for me. Because, you didn't get married to Jason thinking I'm going to get divorced and marry somebody else later. I don't think that's your jam. And because it doesn't feel like that's not your family. You know what I mean? That doesn't get the sense of you guys. I feel like you're a committee kind of person, but you had to surrender. And God was faithful back to you. And that's how I feel that.
I think we open doors when we surrender.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
We open doors when we surrender. That's no truer statement, my friend.
I mean, I knew, but I didn't, I don't, somewhere in there, I did not know that time frame, which I'm just
well, and the shared experience.
Shared experience, but also this, I honestly, when you were sharing, I actually took this deep breath. It was like a thank you, Lord. This is that's the hope, that is the glimmer, Jess. And I'm just thank you, Lord. This is what I'm happy. Although it's been a long time ago, I'm this is wonderful, because I see all the things that have come from this. And even in a dark time, in a sad time, I look at all this stuff that you have done, which is amazing, by sharing all these experiences.
Well, and you can still experience joy. Yeah. That's the thing, is you're a living testament to say, I'm still allowed to be happy. I'm allowed to be happy even in the hardness. So you meet and marry Ryan, which I love. Now I'm now I love Ryan because I loved Jason. Now I love Ryan. And you've got a whole slew of kids, and I love that. You've got a blended family. How old were his kids at the time? Because since yours were puppies.
They were puppies too, 6, 4, and 8 months. He had an 8-month-old.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my
heart.
That hurts my heart for him and his family and his wife.
Yeah. His late wife was diagnosed and passed away 3 months later. So her journey was very fast.
Wow. There is something to be said for that shared experience, to be able to understand that. But clearly there was something that you guys were meant to do, to be together. And I would say that it also potentially helped with your children in the sense of that shared experience for them, and how do they it's building resilience is what I keep thinking. So you guys get married, we're living in Michigan, and we're feeling are you thinking, okay, we've got all these kids, this is fantastic, and you're supporting Lucas, but Lucas hits puberty. And I'm assuming that because I've worked with children with intellectual disabilities, I ran treatment facilities, and I know how challenging it can be, especially with a child who's nonverbal or has limited verbal skills. And then you add behavior on top of that, especially physical aggression. And so how does that impact? Because that's navigating the system. Now it's not just a home, it is school is involved and community is involved when those things happen.
Well, they would have been if we stayed in Michigan, but about a year and a half into being here, we decided to move to rural Tennessee. When we got married, there were 24 grandparents. So we both come from broken families. And then on top of our late spouses' families, we had a lot of people who wanted to offer input into how we were doing life. And so we literally ran away to the middle of nowhere. We bought this big abandoned house on the Tennessee River with 30 acres of land, and we settled down and got to work.
We're at in Tennessee. We're interrupting.
Are we allowed to ask where in Tennessee? Because we're from Tennessee. Because we're in East
Middle
Tennessee,
Tennessee,
West.
Bath Springs.
I don't know where that is.
Is that West Tennessee?
Exactly.
Is it middle or west Tennessee?
It's about 30 miles north of Savannah.
We're Savannah, Tennessee.
We're amazed because we're from Knoxville.
We're
I'm
from
like,
Knoxville.
you just took off.
Outside Knoxville.
This is middle of nowhere. We were about an hour and a half from Jackson, Tennessee.
Okay, you're
okay.
way
We know where that is.
Okay, we know where that is.
We know where that is. Okay,
we're
so
like,
you're on the hurricanes or the tornado side.
You're like taking control.
I love that. So you all said, okay, thanks everybody for your input. We're going to go live our lives.
Peace out.
Yeah, deuces.
Pretty much.
Okay. So you guys get your 30-acre farm and you start living, and then what happens?
It was absolutely beautiful and life-giving and wonderful until it wasn't. And Lucas started to go through puberty, and we were able to find caregivers to help with Lucas up until he started aging. You know, when a child's 7 or 8 and they're in diapers and they're nonverbal, you can still find babysitters to step into that and help you out. When they're 13, 14, 15 and they're screaming and they're still in diapers and they're now hurting people, nobody wants to touch that.
Yeah.
And so this beautiful home that we completely renovated and thought we would live in forever started to feel like a tomb. And we just kind of looked at each other. My husband ended up at Vanderbilt in Nashville with panic attacks that they thought were heart attacks. They did a PET scan to rule out cancer because his health was deteriorating so much because we were just drowning out there by ourselves because there was nothing for families like ours.
Yeah.
And that's when we eventually decided to move back to Michigan.
Okay.
But yeah, it was just a very challenging period.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you move back to Michigan, and what is the support? Because this is for so many special needs. I think about Jessica with We Are Brave Together. We love her, and Dave,
I love her too.
Yeah, love us some Jessica.
Yep.
We Are Brave Together. That's a podcast. It's awesome. And Dave Kreekek is a friend of mine who has Ask Stella now. His daughter is an adult who has intellectual disabilities, but he's worked with the disability population most of his entire career. He's from Tennessee. And so I love that we're all like Kevin Bacon. We're all 7 degrees of Tennessee. But except for Jessica, but that's okay. She's a sister. So you move back to Michigan, and then what happens? Because I hear I feel you very closely because he needs a lot of care, and a lot of care is a nice way to put it. He needs a lot of care. If you needs help with all of his ADLs or his activities of daily living, and needs help with toileting and things like that, that's a ton. So what relief were you able to find, Jess? What really pushed you into, we've got to do something different. I'm going to start doing it.
You know, honestly, we decided to stop putting our trust in the government and go back to where we had friends and family, because the systems fail you all the time, or there are wait lists, or, you know, there's not enough funding or whatever. And so we weren't even really all that familiar. We had heard Michigan had good resources, and we knew that kids like Luke would go to school until they were 26, the only state in the nation. And so that was a perk in and of itself. Like, huge. He has something to do till he's 26.
Yep.
And we came back, and lo and behold, we landed in like one of the best counties in Michigan for services. It's a very philanthropic county. So we have a lot of nonprofits. And when we landed, when he turned 18, I became a paid caregiver, which we did not have that in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And we were also given money funding to be able to hire help for him. And that's how we started out here in the first couple of years.
Yeah.
And then my husband and I decided to create a group home for him.
Yeah.
And we ended up creating that. When did he move in? Last year, he moved in February 2024, and he's been living there now for a year very successfully, about 10 minutes down the road from our house with 3 other disabled individuals and 24/7 care. And it's been a game changer for our family.
I'd say it has. And again, my background is congregate care, and I want people to understand, and this is so hard because you're going to know this, for people who do not have, just because you have a family member, but I'm talking about a child especially with special needs to this severity, the severity and intensity of their needs. To say, oh, I can't believe you put your child in a group home kind of thing. There's so much judgment around that. And I am always like, zip it. You do not get to make that statement. You do not know what that life is like. And I know that I had 100 employees on 3 shifts, Jess. And I think about it's you and your husband. And how do you build your team to support him? And so I love that you took control and said, we did our own group home, and we are setting the standards. I know you're following the standards set forth by the state of Michigan, but you do it in the way that you feel like, hey, this is going to meet his needs and hopefully allow him to experience joy too.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because it's true. There is a lot of judgment surrounding that decision. And if you don't live it, you have no idea. Severe autism is a very intense journey to be on for 19 years. I mean, I slept with a baby monitor beside my head for 19 years, and woke up to his screaming in the middle of the night numerous times and had to go tend to him. And even recognizing for myself that a yes to being Luke's caregiver for the rest of his life was going to be a no to so many other things that I value in life. His 7 siblings, my marriage, myself, and all those things are meaningful too. And Luke is now enjoying the experience of being able to live as an adult. And he is thriving. It was way more difficult on us. My whole identity was wrapped up in being Luke's caregiver for 19 years. And when he left, I was just lost for like 6 months. I didn't even know who I was. But his siblings are thriving, and it's so wonderful. Like, we don't have to be his caregiver anymore. I can just be his mom, and his siblings can just be his brothers and sisters. They don't have to help feed him or help assist him, from one space to another. And we can just enjoy being with Lucas now. It's been a huge blessing for our whole family.
That is so inspirational. I want to make sure, like, that's going to be what we absolutely make sure everybody hears, is that you got it. Like, you are giving, it's almost like you're giving people permission to say, look at how this can work. Give yourself permission to really look into this and say, it's okay if we go this route. Allow yourself to find peace and joy and happiness, and look at how much, you want to say better almost, it's made your whole family. Look at that. I just am amazed.
Well, and I'm going to say this, because a lot of people, we know the system is flawed, and I work in the healthcare system. The system is very flawed, and this is where, no different than how we support mom in a skilled nursing facility. I know, Jess, that doesn't, because Luke's now in this group home, doesn't mean that you all you suddenly stop providing care for him. I know that this mama bear is got high end oversight over exactly what's going on with him, to make sure that he has the quality of care that he deserves and needs, and that is not. And so caregiving has evolved for you, is what it sounds like to me, that it's shifted, and then you've done something with it. Yeah. So let's talk. I want to go into the Lucas project.
Just tell us what you did with all this. Yes, you've done a lot. We want to make sure everybody knows this. You need to find this.
We want to promote you.
Well, the Lucas project actually came out of that really intense period in rural Tennessee when we were so desperate for a break. And I just turned to my husband. I said, if we're this desperate for a break, there has to be other special needs families who also just need a break. And so I Googled how to start a nonprofit and printed off the papers, sent them in. And a couple weeks later, I guess I was the founder of a nonprofit called the Lucas Project. And we partnered with a local school where they allowed us to use their facility for free. And we offered a once a month, 5-hour chunk of time for special needs families to drop off their children in a safe environment so that they could go take a break. They could go on a date or take a nap or go run errands, and just decompress.
Yeah.
But we did that as much for ourselves as anybody else.
Yeah.
And that's been the thread that I've noticed as I've kind of looked back. The thread has always been Lucas. Like, what does Lucas need? What does our family need? What do I need to create? And out of that came the Unseen documentary, where we just wanted to bring awareness to families like ours. And like you were sharing about trying to explain to families who aren't familiar with these diagnoses of severe autism and intellectual disabilities. If you don't live it, you have no idea. You are living in survival mode day in and day out and drowning because nobody wants to step into that and help out. So to be able to put that on film and show that to the world, like what our lives look like, has just been, it's been a humbling experience, and I'm just so proud to even be a part of that. And then all the books. I always wanted to be a writer.
You actually got back to you got back to the center, if you think about it.
Yeah,
like,
I did.
There you go. Yep. You can write some books. So you've written books too.
Yep. From 5 years old, I wanted to be a writer, and so I've been writing my whole life, and just released my 4th book, Caregiving with Grit and Grace. And that was just a beautiful love letter, honestly, that God downloaded into my soul as we were creating Hope Farm, the group home. And I was grieving and processing the fact that I would have to release my son into the care of another. And that was really a struggle for me. Yeah. And in turn, it kind of became this love letter that I released to caregivers around the world. So and then the podcast that stems out of the Lucas Project as well.
Right.
Oh, I just love that.
Yeah, I'm like, with all these I want to make sure everybody knows all this information. We're going to tell you how to find Jess, because you're going to find a lot. So I'm going to jump to my question.
Because I know we got to go. Questions. So we want to be respectful.
So
we could talk all day.
I know. We're like, oh my gosh, she's got so much
going
on.
Together, Jay.
So Jess, here's my question. I probably is. She may say it's hard, but here it is. What's next?
Ooh, good question.
For you.
What's next?
What is the next growth opportunity for you? Because you got a lot.
I think it's rest.
Okay.
I do. I'm really leaning into yoga nidra and somatics, breath work and napping. And I have been going so hard for so long that it's time to rest for a little bit. And then after the rest, I would like to help or possibly create more housing for families for their disabled loved ones.
Oh, I love that, Jess. I'm going to tell you guys, if you've never heard of Yoga Nidra, she's speaking my love language, because these are a type of therapies that are alternative type of therapies that can really help you. And so, Jess, we'll make sure, I'm going to make a mental note to add those as part of our show notes, because I think it's really important to understand. We also had Yvette talk about Reiki. And there's different types of things. So it's not just, I have to go see a therapist, as not, and do cognitive behavioral therapy. There's a lot of different alternatives that you can do. And those are things, I am all about blended interventions that work for you when you need it. And you may pull one off the shelf for today and one off the shelf, a different one tomorrow. Yep. So I love that. It has to be what works best for you. So I'm so grateful to you for sharing that. And I'm excited about future group homes. And I'm like, you should definitely, let's talk about that.
And of course, lots more books. I have like 20 books in the dock.
In your back pocket.
In her mind.
Well, and I'm going to tell you, this is my last question, because this is always my favorite question. And I feel like we might have actually heard what
No, you're going to ask her.
But for me, I'm always going to ask you, what is your favorite guilty pleasure? And now I'm qualifying the statement with, what is the one thing that you do just for yourself that you just love it? That's why for me, I'm like, some people are like, oh, it's a guilty pleasure. Like, I love me some Hallmark and Bridgerton. And so me and Netflix have had a torrid affair. But what's the one thing that you do just for yourself that you're like, this is just mine?
Probably a massage.
Oh,
perfect.
Girl, I love a massage. I'm going to tell you right now. And for me, if it's not 90 minutes, I can't do 60 minutes. I feel like you've just been giving me a petting at that point. You're just touching around the back. Get on down in there.
Yep,
Exactly.
totally agree.
Jess, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Guys, there's going to be so many resources for Jess. You got to find her. You got to check her out. She is a wealth of knowledge.
Oh, absolutely. Jess, thank you for being with us. And guys, until we confess again, we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Well, friends, that's a wrap on this week's confession. Thanks so much for listening in to the podcast. But before you go, please take a moment to leave us a review and tell your friends about the Confessions show. Don't forget, visit our website to sign up for our newsletter, as well as connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and Twitter. You'll also find the video recording of all our episodes on the Confessions website and our YouTube channel. We'll see you next Tuesday when we come together to confess again. Till then, take care of you. Okay, let's talk disclaimers. We are not medical professionals and are not providing any medical advice. If you have medical questions, we recommend that you talk with a medical professional of your choice. As always, my sisters and I at Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver have taken care in selecting the speakers, but the opinions of our speakers are theirs alone. The views and opinions stated in this show are solely those of the contributors and not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted and no part can be reproduced without the express written consent of the Sisterhood of Care, LLC. Thank you for listening to the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver podcast.